Loneliness, as you might know, is one of the most difficult emotions to shake off. It can be sticky and all-encompassing. Here are 3 ways to deal with loneliness based on what I know as a clinical psychologist. But first, here's a quick motivation as to why loneliness is in fact something worth addressing. Nicole Valtorta and her colleagues at the University of York found that loneliness, in other words, the feeling of deficit in your social network, increase your chances of a coronary heart disease by 29% and of stroke by 32%. And if you didn't know, those are 2 of the world's biggest causes of death. But don't be alarmed, because as I promised, here are 3 ways to deal with loneliness, and stick around till the end because the third one is not something people are talking about. First, do not try to switch the feeling of loneliness off. 2 reasons for this. Firstly, we're a social species. Think about the fact that we're one of the few species that are so dependent on having another caregiver around to survive. Most other animals just pop out of their mum and they're good to go. But human beings are extremely dependent on caregivers for years. And so loneliness is a mortal threat to us. It's inherently built into us to not want to feel separated and disconnected from others because our survival at some stage in our lives literally depended on it. But anyways, the point is that if you try to scrub off every little bit of lonely feelings in your consciousness, you will fail. And not only that, you've now added anxiety and pressure to get rid of the loneliness. So you're sitting with loneliness and you're sitting with the anxiety related to have to get rid of this feeling. The second reason you shouldn't try to switch off the loneliness is because it's trying to tell you something. The loneliness is there to motivate us to want to be connected again. In other words, the loneliness is not your enemy, it's actually got your back. So in summary, shift your attitude from one of trying to switch off the emotion to one with trying to deal with it. Okay, the next step is to try to work on any fear related to social spaces. Let me explain. A lot of people feel some level of social anxiety, or shyness, or lack of confidence, or fear of being judged in a social space. And so inevitably, if you're sitting with all these fears, you are going to avoid social spaces. Now think about what happens over time. As you forego the opportunities to socialize, the circle of possibility to socialize gets smaller and smaller. And the problem is that as that's happening, the fear is getting bigger and bigger. Because if you're always avoiding opportunities to connect based on fear, that fear never gets confronted, does it? So here's the big tip here. If you notice any fear or other emotional blocks to being in a social space, make sure you start to address that slowly. And I mean slowly. You don't have to be the MC at someone's wedding, or you don't have to be the person dancing on tables. What I mean is, go to an event for half an hour or an hour. Take a friend with you. Spark up slightly more conversation in a social space. You see, by doing that, you're not only allowing for more opportunities at social connection, but you're also confronting a fear that has been a block in the past and is part of the reason that you have incrementally found yourself in a space where you feel quite lonely. If your social anxiety gets in the way of you making conversation in a public space, I'd recommend watching the video above. Okay, and finally, tip number 3, and the one that I promised not many people are talking about, is to learn to be authentic. But Nevern, what does being authentic have to do with loneliness? Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed that you don't have to be alone to feel lonely? Well, one reason that might occur is because you're not being authentic in social spaces. We often put on this mask in the hope that we'll be accepted and well-liked. But the problem is that even if you are accepted and well-liked while wearing this mask, it's not you that's being accepted. And so you can wear the mask in social spaces, but even with the facade of all this connection, you can still end up feeling lonely because people never ended up connecting to you, the person behind the mask. They connected to the outer shell of a person that you thought you had to be. Now, dealing with loneliness is only one aspect of becoming your own therapist. So if you've enjoyed this video, I would recommend watching the free 30-minute webinar that I've done that covers the fundamentals of becoming your own therapist. I'll see you on the other side.